Good morning. As you can see, I have a box from China. I have been watching the little engines, and I was trying to be well behaved and not buy every one I saw, but this one is too cute, and I saw some other channels had it, and I decided I needed to have one for my own. So, let's pop this open. It is well packed, which, you know, is an expectation we've come to have for these little Chinese engines. And as you can see, the red poking out of the top here, there's a lot of small packing in this. And the very nice little fuel tank here. This is the shiny new, wow, the packing went all over the place. There's no instruction card with this engine, unlike the ET series. So, alright. Finished pulling all this loose packing off of this engine, and this packing is so well on there that it's not just going back in the box real easily, so I'll have to repack that properly later. But as you can see, this is the new red version of the Enjomor model. I got this from Sterling Kit, and it looks like they don't have the name painted on the side anymore, which is nice, because then it'll be open if I decide to do something fancy with it. But it's yeah, I couldn't resist because this engine looks just so nice. It looked so nice in the photos and the other channels I saw, and it's cast so that it's more realistic looking than the built engines. Let's see. Oh, that's what's... This connector is a standard style servo connector for like model airplane servos, and the red wire, it only uses the white and black, so the red wire is just stuck out the side here and trimmed off pretty sloppily. So I guess that's one thing that we'll have to do something about. I'm gonna actually, so I had to extend my tripod all the way up to get the box in place. We'll just rearrange the camera. Alright, so this is the engine. It's got the flywheel clamped in place on the crankshaft here with a split ring wedge. So, and that's a historical method of attaching a flywheel. It's not common. A lot of flywheels were keyed because engines used them for more than just flywheel weight a lot of times, because you'd have the governor fixed to them and different things. So but that is a method that may have been used historically. The ends of the engine have a center in them on the crankshaft. So I don't know if what they needed that center for, but that looks nice. You can see the cam lobe there, and I'm gonna actually push the intake valve there. It spins kind of okay. It's a little stiff. So as I turn this, there's no starter on it, so I have to remember which way it turns when I figure out the timing on it. But right now, top dead center, as the crank comes up and over the top to bottom dead center, it's loose, but then as it goes back down and around, it's a little stiff, so I'll have to maybe investigate that. The connecting rod is cast, and it is marked on top, so I will, when I disassemble this, the other engines, the ET series, have the machined connecting rod, and those, because they're machined, fully machined, and they don't seem to be marked when they come assembled, and I have not noticed any difference by just sort of willy-nilly reassembling the bottom end strap without paying attention. So, but because this one's cast, it needs to be marked because it was machined after casting. So let's see now. There's an oil cup here, but yeah, that oil cup is purely decorative. I can't really show. Yeah, maybe I have a light. Or maybe the flashlight I just had down here is, there we go. Needs a good whack. Alright. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it's visible, but the piston liner, or the cylinder liner and the piston, this is bottom dead center, only come out even with the hopper here. So it's not, since that comes out even at the end of the hopper here, this oil cup doesn't do anything. But these two oil cups go straight onto the bearings, so that's really a nice feature. And of course the head here being cast, this is a very realistically historical head design where they'd cast intake and exhaust and then a hole on the side for the spark plug, and just have the two valves. The angled rocker like this is also a really historical looking design, so that's why I couldn't resist this engine. The big cast arch base design is another really common historical design to save, for a stationary engine, cast a big arch so you'd save material, but also not need to find blocks or something to get the engine to the right height, because farm engines and other portable engines would just get cast more or less flat at this level, and then you'd put the cart underneath them, and the cart would hold the flywheels off the ground. But this engine is patterned after a design that would have been stationary someplace, and you would order that and it would get or an engine design for that would have typically an arch cast like this, or if it was solid base, they'd use that as a place to hide fuel tanks and stuff. But really nice looking engine up close here. Let's see now. I could figure out which way I could look it up. Oh, and these flywheels are cast as well, because they're unfinished here and then they've been machined. All kinds of cool stuff on this engine. So, alright. Alright. I just got this around to just ahead of top dead center, and it looks like that's hitting the ignition, and then it goes around back. Excellent. Okay, so this is alright, that is the way it should turn. So when I start this, I gotta remember that the power stroke is over the top. So, alright. Well, I'll have to find a base to set this up on. And get it arranged so that we can try running it. Let's see the fuel tank. Cute, okay. So the fuel tank is this barrel here, and this black base is just a very, very fancy elbow. Very fancy elbow. And the fuel tank has this, if that's a sand cast finish or whatever, but then it's been rubbed a little bit, so maybe I can polish that up, because it is brass. And then there's a hole in the bottom. If I find the right thread for that, that'll let me screw it to a base by the engine. And let's see, it looks like, oh, that's about right. If you mount the engine and then the fuel tank flat, it will be, the fuel level will always be above the level of the mixer, which is better than having it lower, but it's still, if you don't start the engine right away, the fuel will just run out the bottom of the mixer. So let's see, here's the ignition module. This ignition module is different from the ET series and EM series, and it will have to be because the way that the switches on here, let me pull this forward here again. So when the engine, right, turn this the right way. When it pushes forward to hit the ignition switch here and hit the ignition state switches power is on the entire time that of the power stroke, and also for the entire exhaust stroke, and then it shuts off when the engine gets back to top dead center. So the ignition power is turned on to this unit for an entire rotation of the flywheel. And that means that inside this, it needs to be designed like a Model T buzz coil, where it will automatically, it'll either spark once when it's initially powered, or, no, we'll check it. I think it's just going to spark once based on other videos I've seen, but yeah, it'll spark one time when it initially gets power, and then but it has to have a different circuit design than the ones that use the Hall effect sensor, because you don't, if you just keep the power on that whole time, it can cause damage if you don't design the circuitry right. But anyhow, it's apparently good for engines that run up to 3,000 RPM. After that, I assume it starts to miss sparks. And it's got a very nice warning on the side, watch for danger, or watch out for danger, which is true. You know, spark plug is a couple thousand volts. So, anyhow, very excited about this little engine. I'm gonna have to go find a base to screw it down to, and some time to try and play with it. But first things first, we'll have to find a base, and then see if it runs in a little bit. Also, one more thing. I'll try to turn this. So the cam lobe for this engine, because of the way the ignition is done, is differently shaped than a regular cam. So the cam here has two steps on the lobe. So I'm going to rotate this gently here. So it starts at the bottom, and then it has a half step, and the half step gets the ignition switch, and it stays at that half step for the power stroke, and then it has the remainder to the full step open that opens the exhaust valve for the exhaust stroke. And then when it makes the drop, it drops a full step down to closed and the ignition off. So that's one of the interesting differences in the way that you make an engine that has an ignition attached to the valve rod. So anyhow, all right. Well, we'll be back when I get a chance to put this on a base and put it together and get it ready to run. But very excited to see this. Cute little setup for the exhaust here. And yeah, really pleased with how cute this engine is and how good it looks right out of the box. Hopefully it'll run really nice. Yeah, but we'll find that out when we get to it.